Three unconnected incidents have ignited a national conversation on race in America today. A confrontation in New York Park, the death of the man being taken into Minneapolis police custody, and a presidential candidate saying that voters aren't black if they don't vote for him.
Former Sanders campaign national co-chair Nina Turner weighed in on all of this ongoing conversation, saying, quote, "It is getting harder and harder to keep up with the anti-black and racist foolishness that is going on in America right now. The microaggressions black folks are feeling is real. The implicit cognitive biases are real. Different century, same shit. We are tired of it." And Nina joins us now via Skype. It's great to see you as always, Nina.
Thank you, Krista and Sega.
I wanted to start with the latest news coming out of Minneapolis. We've seen protests erupt, largely peaceful, but some not peaceful. Just what is your reaction to what's unfolding on the ground there right now?
I mean, it's a powder keg when people don't get redressed. There was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that talked about protest being the voice of the voiceless. I'm paraphrasing him, but people really are sick and tired. There's a post-traumatic stress disorder in the African-American communities that is centuries, generations in the making. And so this is really, really hard to continue to ask the African-American community to bear the burden, not just of police brutality, but an entire system that castigates the black community, that the original sin really is being born black. And we are reminded of that every single day of our lives. And it is overwhelming because this is the 21st century and not much has changed. So whether it's a civilian in a park, crying foul, crying wolf, or whether it's at the hands of police officers, being black in America, you can't breathe, you can't think, you can't exist while being black. So I definitely understand the frustrations. Now, certainly I do not support rioting, but I definitely understand the frustrations and the powder keg that is brewing all over this country.
Right, absolutely, Nina. I wanted to ask you about that park incident in particular. It's something that's really ignited around a national conversation around how we should deal with these issues. And something that struck my eye is that the victim of the racist incident himself, Christian Cooper, he came out yesterday telling the New York Times saying that he wasn't sure if he wanted Amy Cooper's life, the woman who made the racist phone call against him. He wasn't sure if he wanted her entire life to be destroyed forever. As somebody who's been the victim of racism, which I watched from here, which was horrific, how do you think about these types of issues?
I mean, noble of him, the black community tends to culturally we are usually always the group culturally to forgive. As part of a black liberation Christian tradition to think that way. And so how noble of Christian to say that. In terms of having her life upended forever, I get that. However, the burden that he had to bear, but for a smartphone, it could have been death by police. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she kind of forgot that his smartphone was recording her performance. Black man, she very deliberately made sure that they understood. And why did she did that? Inquiring minds want to know. I'm glad you asked that question. Because she understands, as we all understand, the implicit cognitive biases that we have all been socialized within this country, dare I say the world, about blackness and what it means to be black. Dr. Eddie Gauld Jr. wrote a book called A Democracy in Black, where he lays out the proposition of the value gap. The whole notion that white lives matter more than anybody else, or in other words, black lives have more value. And then our racial habits that continue to perpetuate said belief. We have to have a truly come to Jesus meeting on this, deal with this both from a civilian perspective and also a government perspective as a country. We've never had real truth and reconciliation. And so while I definitely support the Green New Deal in terms of dealing with the environment, which is why I brought this up, I want us to think about the racialized environment, the environment of stress, of social duress, economic duress, existence duress, that environment that black folks have to occupy every single day of our lives. And this ain't just about people of color, because I'm tired of folks doing this. This is not about being a Twitter warrior, as Senator Amy Klobuchar out there. Meanwhile, back when she was prosecuted, this same police officer in Minnesota, don't get me started on her, or all of these Twitter warriors. We don't need that. What we need from white America and everybody else, because I'm talking about racism and anti-blackness, two distinct and equal phenomenons. But don't just be out there and be Twitter warriors. What are you going to do about it? My grandmother used to say that you can put truth in the river 5 days before a lie, and truth is going to catch up. It's going to catch up, is what she said. And the fact of the matter is that race is still very much, anti-blackness is still very much in the DNA of this country, and folks know it, and that is why they are triggered. Black men in particular. You know, I have a black husband, I have a black son. I worry about them. Now my grandson, I worry about them every single day in my existence to wake up.
So Nina, on that, what should we do? What do we do? Because you have such an important perspective, not only as a black woman, not only as a black mother and now grandmother, but also you are the wife and the mother of law enforcement officers as well. So how do you look at the systemic issues and what the path is, the productive path is going forward?
I mean, it's hard for them. It's hard for me. It's hard for any wife, mother of law enforcement to deal with this, because on one hand, you're there to protect and serve, because human nature can be evil, and that is why we need laws, and that is why we need law enforcement. On the other hand, they navigate this world as black men. What we can do is to do what Stephen Covey once said, is seek first to understand, and then to be understood. For people to reach out and really understand and try to get it. You know, when I was growing up, there was a saying that said it's a black thing you wouldn't understand. It is going to be hard for people to understand because this is about a lived experience, but you can try to understand what implicit cognitive biases are, to check yourself, to be in allyship and be a co-conspirator with the black community when it comes to trying to ameliorate these things on the federal, state, and local levels, to put laws in place, to hold police departments accountable, and to also, in the case of what happened to Christian Cooper, Amy needs to be held accountable for her actions. Now, that doesn't mean her life has to be upended forever, but she cannot just get away with a slap on the wrist, because this was deliberate. What she did was deliberate. So we need government entities to do a better job, and we need everyday citizens not to just be outraged every time they see a video, but to know that this is the everyday living of black people, from simply feeling like you're a suspect when you walk through grocery stores or retail stores, all the way to what is happening to people like Miss Taylor from Kentucky, who got shot in her home, you know, to Aubrey, to Floyd, to Cooper. I mean, Emmett Till didn't have a smartphone.
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? Emmett Till did not have a smartphone. There have been countless other black people who have been victims, who didn't have the benefit of 21st century technology to prove that they were right. Something is wrong in this country, and we need true truth and reconciliation.
And, you know, Nina, it strikes me that, you know, in the midst of what you're saying and so much of this, that we also had that moment, which I know deeply upset you, which we saw, which was the Democratic nominee for president, Joe Biden, going, you know, on the Breakfast Club and essentially saying you are not black if you cannot choose between, if you choose Trump over me, essentially what he was saying. I mean, what was your reaction to that moment, both at the time and now in the context of so much of what we see going on in the country right now?
So God, I've been triggered ever since that moment, because it really shows what a deep disrespect and the level of racism that courses through the minds and the hearts of white America. When the vice president, he is the presumptive nominee, and I want to put an exclamation point and underline presumptive nominee. To say those words, think about the black people who don't necessarily support him. They are feeling the same pain that any other black person is feeling. It's not about whether you're conservative or liberal or progressive. It is about being black in America. And so it is indicative. He is just a symbol of the symptom that rages in this country on how elected officials, particularly white elected officials, treat and believe that African Americans on the Democratic side owe them their vote. All of this is a phenomenon that crushes the very spirit and identity of black folks. And to continue to take us for granted is unconscionable, unacceptable. And what he said was racist. Let's just go on and call it what it is. We cannot make excuses for people that we like. We got to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But there are opportunities. I definitely see promise in the problem, but it cannot be about putting out tweets and Facebook posts. What What public policies are you going to push? What are you going to stand for? What are you going to put on the line, especially if you are an elected official, to try to ameliorate this excruciating pain that the African American community is reminded every single day, every single generation, that we are Black in America and that America treats its dark-skinned children differently than everybody else.
Nina Turner, well said as always. Great to see you.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you both.
Next on Rising, Kentucky State Representative Charles Booker's primary campaign is defying expectations with some major endorsements. He's going to share a bit more about his bid for the U.S. Senate when Rising returns.